Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman Podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Joji. Welcome back to the Deconstructed Woman Podcast. Just a little bit ago, Joji and I were sitting down kind of reflecting on our week, and Joji had discussed that she had had a recent loss and how that had impacted her in a lot of different ways. And we both kind of began to reflect on, when certain situations in your life happen, you tend to take a pause and step back and say, maybe there's some things I need to change. Maybe there's some things that, I need to look at in a different light. And so we wanted to kind of bring that topic because I think that this is timely for a lot of people, regardless of where you are, season of life and that sort of thing, is that, a lot of times we don't necessarily pause and say, hey, I need to take a moment and really reflect on where am I at. And so, Joji, I want to kind of bring you into this conversation. And I think as we were talking, there was a lot of offshoots to this. Things that we've touched on in the past, like self-care and embracing our age and those sorts of things. But I think that, when we look at it as a whole, it's about taking time to pause and say, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to go. So Joji, why don't you kind of speak to what was your experience, and then we'll kind of jump from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the last week has been really hard on many different levels. I mean, I lost a family member who was very young to a unpredictable health condition that devastated not only her family. She leaves behind 2 young children, 3 and 7, and a husband who was just, I think in his own world, and a sister who lives, close by, and her parents. And so I think that it was really important for me to go to the wake in funeral and support my family. But also I feel like there's been a lot of contemplation going on for me because I had plenty of time in the airport while my flight was being delayed and things like that to think about just how life is so unpredictable. And as a result of that, we have to stop and take stock in where we're at the moment. And for whatever reason, this particular loss is resonating with me in a different way. I can't fully explain it. I was 37 when my dad passed away about 20 years ago, and my mom passed away about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And each time that I lose somebody like that, I think to myself, I have to live more mindfully. I have to not take each day for granted. But 20 years ago, when my father passed away, and I had a young child at home, and, I only had one. Melissa, you have 4, and many people have somewhere between 1 and 4 or more. And it's in your 30s when you're having children or raising children, it's really, really hard to make any significant changes because your life is not your own. And so at that time, as much as I really wanted to make some changes, I really felt that I couldn't because I was working outside the home. My child's life was really, what we were all about. My husband and I were both working, and, we were just trying to make it from day to day. And so to be able to figure out how to, make my life a priority and do what I want and take care of myself and enjoy my life in a way that my dad maybe didn't have a chance to was just so intangible at that time. Like I just couldn't grasp. And when I lost my mom, I had a similar feeling. And I was much older and my child was older. And yet it was like I was still in the midst of my career. I was still doing things. And now I'm 57 years old. Somehow or other, I feel grateful that I have 20 years more than my family member did who passed away. And I feel accountable to own my age and to make use of the time I have in a different way than I've ever felt before. And one way I'm going to do that sort of symbolically is, and we had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago with our listener, Sue. I have always, for the last year or so, thought about going gray. And this week, I cemented my decision to start that process. And so, as luck would have it, I had my color appointment yesterday and my appointment yesterday. And so we got some dates and times on the calendar for me to go ahead and do that because it is a process. I will wait until after the holidays, and as of the new year, I will stop coloring my hair, and it will take, a good amount of time. I will end up cutting my hair to a bob length to reduce the amount of grow out that I have to deal with. And so anyway, my mind is really there. And as I talked to people in the last 24, 48 hour about this decision, I think that given that I'm tying it to my family member passing, I think people are being kind to me. I think there's some question of why, why are you doing this? Won't you feel old? And some of the stuff that Sue brought to the conversation when we, had our podcast maybe about a month ago. But I'm sort of at a very different place. And so for me, it's sort of like, yep, it's a decision I can't fully articulate. I don't know why it feels so strong. But as my sister-in-law said to me yesterday, like, if this is what your heart is telling you to do, then follow your heart. And that was probably the most supportive thing that could have happened because I don't have any words for it. I just feel like I have to do it and it's time. And I want to own my age because I have learned a lot in 57 years and I don't want to pretend that I'm not that age. And I don't know why I feel like that. It's, of course, people who don't color their hair, you have to do what's right for you and it's an individual decision. I'm at this place right now and I'm not speaking for anyone else, but I feel like I need to be owning my age. And this is one way that I can do it because my cousin will not have the opportunity to ever be 57. And that has left a hole in my heart. And so that's sort of where my mind is right now. I know it's like all over the place, but this is where I'm, it's really resonating with me right now.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about it a little bit before we got on, but I think for me, I really hear you when you say in those earlier years, because I know, that's in some ways that's where I'm at. I have four fairly young children. My oldest is 10 now and like a preteen. So I'm getting into kind of that, new stage of like middle school she'll go to next year. And that's like, well, okay, we're getting there. And it's at a stage where I do feel like all of my children, like they are self-sustaining, like they can walk and talk and do things and whatnot. But I do think that there's also this sense of I need to have, and as one of them walks in the room, I need to take some time too, to be able to say, I need to take care of myself. I actually made myself a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning to just say, hey, I need to follow up on some things because I haven't done that. I haven't, taken care of myself in a way that was necessary. And so I think that that's important too, as we go through things. Because I think that we don't always do that. And that's something that, you know, unfortunately, if you don't take care of yourself, it can lead to, bigger problems, things down the road that you never anticipated. But I think that there's a lot to be said about taking that stance, taking that next step and making some choices that maybe you wouldn't have done otherwise. Like recently had a loss as well. And it was really, I think that loss does really open your eyes to your current circumstances and kind of remind you again of how the life is fleeting and that's when, we're not here forever and that we need to use that time to the best of our ability rather than wasting it on frivolous things that aren't as important.
Yeah, I'd say that, as I think the first stage of grief is always to be like, why did this happen? Just ignore symptoms of whatever happened. We never know what actually happened. We will never know. But I think the reality to your point is that we don't, as women, we've talked about before that we put ourselves last. I think there's a good indication that there was a lot going on with this young family and there were other priorities that she needed to focus on. And so I'm pretty sure that she put herself last. And I think that our bodies, women's bodies, I mean, the human body alone, male or female, is just, like a mystery. And it's such a creation of, just amazing kinds of functions. But then at the same time, if we don't keep up with our bodies and don't pay attention to our bodies, then we're missing signals and our body will just keep getting louder and louder until it breaks down, which is sort of what happened with her. And I also want to say that as a woman who is 57, I went, something happened to me physically that I was like, well, that was weird. I don't know what that's about. And so then I went ahead and made an appointment, with my doctor. And it took me 4 months to see this doctor because there's a shortage of this doctor in the market. And so I finally saw her uh, last week and I'm explaining to her what happened. And she's like, well, that's not normal. And I'm like, it's not? And she said, no. She's like, women who are menopausal, should not be bleeding, not TMI here. I apologize. But I'm like, oh, I guess, as women, we bleed for so long in our lives. I just thought, well, it was unusual, but it's not, a lot or whatever. And she said, yeah, I mean, part of the physiology of menopause is that you don't have anything that, monthly breaks down and is sort of evacuated from the body. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. She said, this is going to mean that we should do X, Y, and Z, get some testing done. And so I'm going through all of that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like Pandora's box. Like, I think my point being that even though we think we know our bodies and we think that, initially I was like very much aware that, okay, this was something that was odd. I didn't think it was as odd as, my doctor told me, but I had enough, to me to go ahead and make an appointment, which then took me 4 months. And then now 4 months later, like, okay, well, this is, sort of an emergency situation. You need to go get this done right away so we can catch anything that might be unusual. And thankfully I'm fine. And it must have been a fluke or something. We don't know why. But either that was sort of, and that was right before my family member passed away. And so it was like a lot happening at one time. I felt like sort of all bets were off there for like 24 hours just for myself. And then it was like, okay, things that calmed down, everything was okay. And then, I lost my cousin. And so I think it reminds you of how even if our best intention is to take care of ourselves, that life gets in the way. And it's really, really important to be aware of that and not to let our mental exhaustion of the day to day. And now, the holidays are upon us. And this week is Thanksgiving. And it's like before we know it, we'll be between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And it's like in a blink of an eye, we'll be in 2026. And so it's like the hardest time to slow down and to enjoy yourself or take care of yourself because everything is ramping up as we near the end of the year. And I know usually, unless at the end of the year, we also do sort of like a reflection on the year. But I feel like this year, just like blink of an eye, it has been gone. So I don't know where you're at with all of that, but I know we talked a little bit about mental exhaustion and this concept on a podcast I was listening to yesterday, and I was talking about the 2 arrow kind of philosophy. The first arrow is the event, and the second arrow is all the mental energy we give to analyzing and dissecting the event and worrying about it, being anxious and reliving it and thinking about what we should have done, could have done, and things like that. Is that something that you find yourself burdened with, or is that not something that's not where your mental exhaustion comes from?
I mean, I think it's probably a combination of the two. I mean, as you were saying, like, I'm going to go back for a minute because as you were saying, like, reflecting on the year, like I said, 2025 was a year that I was going to medically take care of myself, like get all of my medical appointments that I hadn't done. Like I'd never been to a dermatologist before. I just like I took it by storm. and was like, I'm going to make my medical, or physical, I guess it's not my physical health I'm going to work on that. And so that's what I did for 2025. And I think I did a pretty good job. I kind of, went along. But I think 2026 is going to be the year for me to get my mental health in top shape. So it's interesting because as I took care of physical things, things that, like you were saying, like you hear, you feel something, it feels off. Oh, I should probably get this checked out. Those sort of things. Like I did all of that. And, I think we've talked about it, but I had a hysterectomy this year because test results showed that I needed to medically do that. And so there was a lot that happened. But now I do feel like that emotional exhaustion has taken its toll. And I finally have gotten to the point where I need to now put in place, like if people say, do things that light you up or do stuff, self-care and all of these different terms. But I really need to hone in on what does that look like, to lean on my husband and say, I need you to take over because I'm just tapped, to let people help me when I really need it. I think that that's what 2026, and not that I'm already doing these things, starting to do them now. But it's, like you said, it's almost Thanksgiving. So only got a month and a half really left of the year. But in that time, my plan is to put things in place so that my mental health is the focus. Um, because I think that, for me, I can only focus on one thing. Um, I do have a lot, like your family member, a lot on my plate. I work full time. I have 4 kids. I have, various things that call my attention from day to day. And so it gets all lost in the mix unless I'm really consciously focused on, I need to take care of this. So that was one thing. I do think, in reflecting on that, like I was saying, before we got on, I haven't been feeling well, which you probably can hear in my voice, all week long. It didn't feel well and I pushed through. And finally, Friday morning, I said, you know what? I'm not going to push through anymore. I'm going to take a day off. And that felt really different because I was like, no, keep pushing, keep pushing. And then I said, no, my body's not going to make it. Like, I'm not going to be able to get through my weekend and start the next week if I don't rest. So I think that, like you said, our bodies tell us, but I think that it's also about consciously making a decision too.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, mental health, when I don't understand like why. That's probably because we're so busy that it's hard to be able to entertain two things at one time. I feel like, doing this podcast is really my re-energizing kind of event. Like I think that this, having this process and having the opportunity to meet other people and, talk to people and really get our voices out there, and it has been a release valve for me. And so I'm doing something that I love that is really nourishing to me. And I don't do a lot of things anymore. Like there was a time where I would have multiple activities and multiple ways to recharge myself, but it was really difficult because they all take a toll when they accumulate together. And so I'm a very simple person. I think at this point in my life, I know that I can't have 5 things I love to do. I have to focus on like one thing and work outside, work outside the home and be a partner to my husband. Like those are the things that I have that I have to focus on. Because if I get other things involved, it gets really, really challenging for me. And so I don't know if that's just, being the age I am and realizing that about myself, that as much as like sometimes I look back and I say, man, when I was in my 20s, like I had, literally I had a full-time job and 2 part-time jobs, and I was in a relationship, and I was a social butterfly and hung out every weekend. I did a lot. And I think it's just that process of aging that, you change just physically, and you can't do that level of activity. Like I can't survive on 4 to 6 hours of sleep. I literally need like 10 hours of sleep anymore. And so it's sort of interesting. I mean, I'm grateful that I am learning this about me and I've sort of scaled things down. And it's so hard to know what to give up and what is important enough to have a third of your attention in my example. But I have found that otherwise I don't really feel like I'm doing anything well. And, it's just, I think it's really, really difficult. And I sort of feel like I'm in the opposite place that you are, Alyssa. I feel like I have to focus on my physical health next year. I sort of let things go by the wayside. I didn't exercise as much as I wanted to. I've been having a really hard time getting out of bed, so I am struggling. I usually work out in the morning, and so I've cut back on my exercising to maybe about 15 minutes a morning instead of, what I should be doing is getting closer to 30 minutes. And so I got to get that back under control for the new year. And just because so much of you as you get older has to do with staying mobile and staying flexible and, building your weight bearing exercises and things like that. Because this year I did find out that I was in osteopenia, so I got to take care of my bones. And, it's just, it's like never ending. It's always something that you got to keep your eye on. And I think this year I've just been really tired, and I don't know why that is, but I've just been, for the first time, I've, not gone to work when I've been really sick. I was sick at work and I came home and surprised myself and my husband when I was just like, you know what? I've never felt this way before and I got to go home. And it was new for me, but it also felt very liberating. Like, it feels good to take care of myself. And who am I trying to prove that I am like super person to? Like, like I already have done that, been there. And now it's just about being normal and just doing what I need to do for me and not worrying about other people. And that has not been easy to come by. And so I'm also feeling good about the fact that I have reached that threshold when it comes to being honest about where I'm at. So it's definitely been a journey. We'll see, I mean, I'll be 60 in 2 years. And so I continue moving in that direction. And if I'm lucky to live beyond 60, I mean, you become a little bit wiser about your body and things like that. But I don't know. I feel like this year flew by and I was just mentally exhausted the whole time. So I definitely have to get control of that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I mean, I think as you were talking, I was like, yeah, I'm like, yes, like that. I feel that same way. And we're, in two different seasons of life. So I'm like, maybe we got to look into this. I don't know if there, I mean, I think this has been a hard year in general. All the things happening in the world, happening, here in the United States, all over. I think probably if we took a poll, I think emotional exhaustion would be, at the top of a lot of people's list. And maybe just, inflation, finances. Like, I think a lot of things are coming to the forefront and people are realizing we can't just keep pushing through. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to like get into politics or anything like that, but I'm saying like, I think that there was a lot that happened. If we'll do the reflection. So don't worry, listeners, we will do a reflection at some point of the year and kind of look at all the episodes we had and stuff like that. But I think that the theme of emotional exhaustion may be more universal than we think because I'm in a different season of life, but absolutely 100% saying the same thing. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. I said, I have to go home. I have to stay home. I can't go to work today. And I don't think I had extra vacation days from last year that I just rolled over because I didn't take them. So obviously I'm, not taking the time that I needed to take even in the last year. And I said, like, one of the things that I'm going to use all my vacations this year. I'm going to, take my time off. And that feels strange to me because I feel an obligation to be at work, to be there, to be the best person that I can for my company and everything. But it also is about taking care of ourselves and reflecting back on what do we need. I mean, we have a lot of, ways that we're driven. But at the end of the day, we gotta take care of ourselves. So I think emotional exhaustion is definitely at the forefront, but there are ways to counter that too. And starts with, taking care of yourself?
I mean, I think that the one thing I realized as I, did come home, and I think I surprised a couple people, definitely including my husband, but even at work, it's sort of like, wow, you've never done that before. And I'm like, well, I've never thrown up at work before. I mean, I'm not one to lightly throw up. And it's like, it was such a weird experience. And I thought, well, maybe I'm getting the flu and I don't want to, get everybody sick. And, but I came home and like I slept for the next 4 hours, which is unheard of. And, so I feel like, even the people around you, I think they pick up on when you are doing something different. And I feel like it was a good thing, to show people, and even my employers, like, I'm a human being, right? At some point the body breaks down and then I won't be good for anybody. So it's just sort of like, I think it taught me that I send a message when I do push through it, like to use the words that you use, Elisa. Like, I think that people expect that from us. And I think that works against us sometimes. And it's refreshing to know that people also respect it when you do take a time off for yourself, because I think they know that something critical must be happening. And so it has been, I think, a year of recognizing that I don't have to be that person, which also was a relief to me, because it's a heavy burden to carry when you feel like you have to, you have to constantly be on at home, at work, with your friends, with whatever. And I think every once in a while is good to sort of, fall apart and let somebody else step in and do what they got to do, because I think it wears on us when we are. And I think by personality, at least you and I, Elisa, we're cut from the same cloth. We're definitely people who will, take charge or help somebody else out, or, get it done kind of a situation. And long term, we can't do that, for solid a year or two without it taking a toll on us. And so I did even learn that this year, sort of like this idea of, it's okay. Everything will continue working without you. You not going to work or you leaving work early the place is not going to crash and burn. It's a bigger engine than that. You are one little cog in this machine. And whether you want to believe it or not, you're just not that important. The world is going to continue. And so that was a good insight too, because I thought sometimes I feel like it puts us into a cycle that's also destructive for ourselves, because now we feel like we have to keep that engine running and we're running on empty. So I think that this has been a good conversation to sort of, summarize sort of where I've been this year, for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was going to say, like, I can round this out and kind of, again, I as always, I feel like I always say the same thing at the end, but I think that it's very true. Like, this is just the start of a conversation for the women out there and men who are listening into this podcast to take pause, to think about, where you're at in life. What do you need right now? Whether it be physical, emotional, whatever it is, social. I think it's worth it to say, this is what I need right now, and this is what I'm going to do. So thank you for listening in. And, as always, please feel free to contact us, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions, or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.